Fishermen here at 22nd Street, and we're doing a podcast from inside Phil's studio here. And tonight's going to be a section on, I'm going to question you is, what level and what elevation of fishing do you want to take yourself to and that you'll be happy with? Because the dedication level is totally different depending on the levels that you're seeking, you know. And I'm going to tell you that I've been blessed being around a lot of these great people, and I'm going to try to reinforce why I've been lucky enough to be around these people and how it's helped elevate my game over the years. You know, I've been around a lot of these hardcore guys, but it has to do with your level of commitment going into the fishing arena. You know, first off is sourcing knowledgeable tackle shops for you that you can be comfortable with, people that you trust. They're helpful with their information. You know, they're not there to just sell to you. They're gonna hit your needs, whatever you need, whatever your level may be, and perhaps elevate it upon you talking to them and them assessing where your level is. Then perhaps going fishing with them. You know, a lot of them have charters with different boats. Get to know them. You know, these guys have done their homework and their due diligence about the boats that are working with. So usually the credibility factor is a keen deal, you know, for them. Their reputation's at stake too. So they want to put you on not only just fish, but they want to put you with a crew and a captain that really work their tails off for you. You know, good crews are very open about their information, friendly, helpful. You know, they're always willing to give you help, setting up tackle, giving consulting on things you need to do even during the day, and you need to pay strict attention to them. You need to be the ultimate sponge, soaking up information, storing it away back in that computer of yours here, and you know, matching when you want to get up there with the highliner fishermen. Yeah, you have to match the same intensity as those guys, you know. And that means doing your homework, due diligence, you know. Keep your eyes open. This is something Taka used to tell me. Eyes open, ears open, and mouth shut, you know. And then we did that particularly when we were in the wheelhouse as captains, you know. But then you have a network of guys that you do work with and you share information with, and that commitment to those guys is the same. You have to be able to be very forthright with them and honest with them, you know, you know, that's how you get to that exception, you know. But do not, as a novice maybe, don't be frustrated by your entry if things don't go out. It takes a long time, you know. It's your due diligence, you know, that you're going to grow by, and you're yearning to keep learning and watching and seeing things. I mean, I got to tell you, if I can't learn something new, even all the years that I fished, if I can't learn something new every time I go out, I'm not looking hard enough. It's always there. It's always there. Even more so when it's elevated. So if you're amongst a good group of, say you're fishing a charter with a tackle shop and they've got tremendous fishermen, keep an eye on them, watch, you know. Unless you're in that bunch, you know, you can see what they're doing. You don't necessarily have to go and ask them the questions. You can kind of tell by the reels, by the size of the reels, by the rods. I mean, you can very subtly look at the size of the hook. You know, generally the smaller the hook, the smaller the line size. You know, you match it accordingly, you know. And particularly if you're one of the serious guys on the boat and want to be there, you know, so you'll have an outfit for each particular line class. You know, you're 20, you're 25, you're 30, 40, 50, 60. And that's why you mass all these bundles when I walk on the boat, you know, and you just never know what it's going to take. And I think on some earlier shows that, you know, when I was fishing with that group on the Freedom where they were all skippers, very competitive, you know. So you had to have your A game. And I made mistakes on that very early going into it. You know, I started with light line because I'm watching them, I'm looking at the fish, small 20, 25 pounders. And so I'm thinking, oh, that's typical bluefin, you know. So I pull out my 20. Now, I made the mistake, and I mentioned this before, using a 9-foot rod and a small Valiant reel, making long casts. I'm out casting everybody, but I had a very short top shot of fluorocarbon straight to the spectra. Now, when you're fishing way down below, I got used to that thing hits the water, the bait dives down, and bingo, I'm nailed. It's different. It was different, totally different. These fish were acting totally like bluefin that I grew up with, where they're line shy, they're touchy. So I went up a little bit because I had a little bit of mono on I had fluorocarbon mono to my spectra, but it was a little more mono, but not a lot. I fire the bait out, the bait takes off. Again, nothing. And these guys are hanging fish on straight mono, 20, 25 mono. Well, only because, and by luck, my 30-pound outfit had the fluoro to longer, I think probably 40, 50 yards of mono, just happened to be on there, and then back to spectra. I fired that out and I got bit. Well, thank goodness, thank goodness it had a 2-speed. It was a Valiant 500. And the problem was, I was fishing my lighter hooks that corresponded, and because the fish were touchy, I fished those lighter hooks thinking that I'm looking at 20, 25-pound fish, and thinking, I'll use my light gamakatsus with rings, which I use for albacore fishing, and you can catch fish up to, like, say, 40 pounds like that with those particular hooks. Well, after finding the first one with that hook, I ended up straightening it out once I had them right there at color, So I went to a Owner Gorilla, a heavier duty hook, with that same 30-pound outfit. Fired out, got bit again, and once again, a heavier fish. And I straightened that hook out. So I went and used a 4X 1/0 Mustad with a ring and hooked one. I got the first one was probably 65, 70 in that neighborhood. But it just so happened that in all 6 fish that I hooked, they were all those bigger fish. One after that, I straightened 2 hooks out. I got chewed through on a big fish that we had the 2 gaffs out ready for, and that one was probably pushing a hump. But you're looking at all this transpire, and you're thinking, God, this size fish, if I could get them on 40, I could do a number on them, at least not be at their mercy the whole time. But because of that, I was pushed to the limit on that 30-pound rod. And in doing so, knowing that you have to hold the right angles on it, you have to keep it down pointed so you're taking the most pressure out. And now the higher you go up, you start dropping off in pressure. You can't do that with these bigger fish, and lighter line doesn't work that way. So fortunate enough to be able to land what I'd landed on those nice fish with that 30-pound outfit. Something I would never specifically target that fish with that size line, but with all the talent that was on the boat, all these skippers, and none of us could get bit on 40, that was it. You had to make do with what they allowed us. And they're not bluefin for nothing. That's so typical of bluefin, So, it's not, if you're frustrated by that when you're watching, it's figuring it out. And sometimes it takes even us old guys that have been around, that ran boats. It took me a while to figure it out, because I'm watching, I threw the 40, I didn't get bit. I'm looking at everybody else, nobody's getting bit on 40. So you concede to fishing 30-pound, but when you start seeing that all of a sudden these bigger fish move, then you're going, oh great, yeah, you're going to be in for a fight. But don't get frustrated. Hang in there. You gotta do what you gotta do, and at that point, what helped me there is understanding the rod angles that you're lifting at. I'm getting a quicker lift with the graphite. It's a much lighter rod, but it recoils. It recovers much faster. So, that with the 2-speed, that Valiant 500, it was the perfect combination for that particular time of day. But, it has to do with practicing. It took me a little while to get going on that. But, watching what's going on, assessing the situation, helped dial me into that, the mono, the longer length of mono and the fluorocarbon to get it going. And thank God, because like I said, they're bigger fish. But over the years, I look back and I've got to give credit where credit is due. And I've got a list of people that, I'm the only reason why I'm going to be reading this, I don't want to miss any of them. And I already know that I probably have missed some, but just to verify it with you guys, people that I really do credit a lot of my success over the years on sport boats for. Well, first off, it was, Taka Tanaka. He was my mentor, and I was his second for many years. I also worked I worked as a second for George Mayo on the New Hustler too, and then one of my old long-standing friends who was here at 22nd Street too was Russ Iser, the father of Spectra. Innovative, the man was just unbelievable. He had the visions for Spectra. He had visions for a lot of stuff, and as much knowledge and his experience he had, I gave him a lot of credit because he even listened to a young kid like myself when we're, if I was critiquing things and everything. And he and I would have duels on my boat. He chartered my boat. I was just blessed to have him around too. But, here he is, the father of Spectra. And, just such a blessing being around the landing here. But, I look back, and again, I'm going to read off some of these guys so I don't miss anybody. But, I was blessed having the captains, like on the Mustang. I had my brother Steve, who's now on the Outer Limits. He completely rebuilt the old Chubasco, turned it into Cherokee Geisha from 83 to 84, had it running by 84, and we had phenomenal years. And he ran that boat for a number of years, before he went on the Outer Limits. And he's been there ever since. I don't even know how many years he's been on there. But there's the Tanaka brothers. There's Steve and Marty Tanaka. Steve ran the Fortune. He ran the New Hustler. He was around for quite a while. Rick Fujisaki was also one of my captains. Mike Redlew was on the boat. He and Steve Tanaka and those guys were young kids. They were 14, I think, when they started with this. But Mike's run operations, had the land. He was over at Long Beach, sport fishing there, and Brian Kirhara was one of my last pinheads, and I look at him, and he's one of the highliners of the fleet, and his operation, he's taken it far and above. Here's a perfect example: American Angler Cup that they issued to us on the boat. So now, where in the years past we go through cases and cases of styrofoam cups for coffee on the boat. Well, now you have one of these that you could use all the time. My wife complains we got a whole cabinet full of collectible mugs from all over the place and everything else. But every day, this American Angler Cup is all I use. And every year they issue a different color one. So now it becomes a collectible deal, So it's a smart marketing deal, That's Brian was my last one. But on the Mustang, we had John Fuqua ran the boat. We had a gal that was in the galley, Fran Kennedy. She was in the galley, but she went out and got her license. And Fran, as far as I know, still owns the 20-pound albacore IGFA record. It was 75 pounds. And what it was when these fish were in the channel right here in front of us in Pedro here in 1984, I sent her out with Russ Iser on the first string. And it was so funny because I used to tell Fran, you got to quit using this sinker, a split shot on it. Just learn to get your bait to swim down by fly lining it and everything. Well, lo and behold, she gets a 75-pounder on a sinker. So what do I know? But no, she's a great gal, and it was an awesome feat. I think it's still standing as a world record, so it's pretty awesome, And then so here's ran on the Fortune. I had some people. I actually hired probably one of the first gals to run a boat down there in San Diego was Gigi Sander, and she ran the Fortune for us. And I think that was 1981. Billy Stevens, Steve Tanaka, and Bobby Yoshihiro, number of kids that were running, that were on board with the Fortune for us. Then we go over to the Cherokee Geisha. Of course, there's my brother, but Brian Kirhara. I moved Brian over there, when we had the third boat. We had like Billy Stevens, Butch Harris, Harlan Burke, Vince Baglioni, and I may be missing a few people there too. But our family and the operation that we couldn't have survived without these were the backbone of our boats and of our fleet, personal fleet. We couldn't have survived without a number of these guys. And once again, I'm going to read these because I don't want to miss any of them. They're so important to me. We couldn't have made it without these guys. First one was Harold Wetta, who worked over at Harbor Diesel. Well, he was the #1 Detroit diesel guy on the West Coast. I mean, and then some, because they would send them out on, they would fly them out to the South Pacific, to the Persainers on anything that was at Detroit, whether it's even, 671 in a skiff or something. But he was the Detroit guy. And also, he was one of my bass fishing partners on certain days, freshwater bass fishing, and he was just a great person, Frank Redlew, Mike Redlew's father. My God, this whole fleet wouldn't survive without people like him. Frank was, he was the West Coast distributor for, rep for Morris Controls. But it wasn't just the Morris Controls. He had a tremendous knowledge of boats, period. Didn't matter what it was. He was connected up, but he had the knowledge, which was invaluable. I'll give you a funny example on that one too. One time we had a little soft spot back by our bait tank on the Mustang. And this is when we first got the boat. So the deck was still original deck from 1965. So there's a soft spot. So we cut this section out, and I figured we were just going to shell it, put the plywood over it, fiberglass over it, and we're done. So they send me off to Marine Hardware, which is down on Harbor Boulevard here, just straight down from, at that time we were at Norm's Landing, which is Ports of Call Landing, and I think now it's LA Harbor, sport fishing. So they send me off to go get some material for the patching this deck. By the time I came up, they had these crowbars, and they had the deck lifted from the bait tank all the way up to the bow. And I'm having a heart attack. I'm going, holy smokes. But I have to tell you something. After that, we put on a much bigger bait tank, which twice the size. That deck has been on there, I think that was like 70, maybe 77, 78. So it's been on there forever, and it was done right. And Frank went out and got this. It's a boat resin that they use for casting hulls that goes off in like 30 minutes. So regardless how cold it was, and we were working like at 1 o'clock in the morning, this stuff went off right on time. But if it weren't for that, it would have been Mickey Mouse. But Frank was just, his knowledge of boats and everything was invaluable. He was a boating encyclopedia as I was concerned. We had partners, Bashi, and he helped out a lot. Gary Ossing, he helped fabricate. He was at Western Airlines before they went to Delta, but they did a lot of the fabrication of stainless for the Cherokee Geisha's galley. Bobby Ito. I grew up with Bobby as little kids, but these guys all helped out. Nelson Iwasaki, Zach Meridian, got us this. My father, Frank Kadota, a friend named Daryl Peeney. He was a custom car artist. Well, he did the first airbrushing on the Mustang, and he started doing it on some of my other boats, still in the Cherokee, where it was more artwork. I might have to bring the albums in to show you, but I went against Coast Guard regulations where you had 9-inch blocks that you had, boring blocks, and he did these things where it was shadowing, and he did custom cars, and they were phenomenal. And in 3 years, he did 3 different renditions of the Mustang on that. And I'll have to bring the album in so you can see that. But we were blessed to be around people like this, And then there was Tommy Amalfitano on San Pedro Fish Market. Well, thanks to him, when there was no squid to be had, I had squid. He always had the squid in the freezers for me. I was taken care of, whenever we'd have come back in on the weekend, if we had extra live or whatever, we would just put it in, in buckets and take it up there, while they're still alive, just to thank you for, for taking care of us all those years, So there's also the Fujikawa brothers. They were commercial guys. They had the Amy Lynn and Midori, and they were kind of like a code boat, but they're commercial guys. They had whaleback boats, and so like during the wintertime, they squid fish. So what was great for us in particular, was that I had a policy that I would leave the dock an hour before the rest of the fleet. And they hated that because it kind of set that bar. But what it did was it allowed me to go over to Catalina into the squid grounds, and there's probably 20, 30 boats. It was all lit up. You could see it, 20 miles away. Then you'd also hear sounds of it sounded like World War III, guns going off because the amount of seals going in there. And you got to remember, there's hundreds of tons of squid that were floating in these areas. The water was just pure white, and I would go in there and we'd idle in, and actually built special receivers to fill up the 100 scoop tanks that we had on the Mustang, the 4 tanks, and we'd pull in, and what it was I had big 4-inch PVC, and I had, here's another guy, Toshigashi used to do my nets. He's one of the he grew up in Terminal Island, but he worked in a lot of the commercial areas and fishing, the bait boats and stuff, and he would tie up the mesh, built these big receivers that would hold literally a ton of squid. So we would come in, Bobby or Freddie would braille, 2,000 pounds in to fill all 4 bait tanks and the bow tank, and we would back away, load it, turn the lights off, go around the corner at Catalina and off to Clemente, and this stuff wouldn't be possible without these guys, but it was, that helped elevate our game too. We started, like I said, just building those receivers like that had that capacity. It helped because I figured too, having my crew being able to sleep the night rather than staying up all night snagging squid, and the passengers, we would tank up, head out. We'd also get position alpha when we got to Clemente. So that was also what was, something that was very big on my mind, is having position alpha. So going that extra yard anytime you fish, it'll always pay back in time, especially if you make it a habit. One of the other guys is Andy Anderson. He would own San Pedro Sheet Metal. He would do fabrication for us. It was great. Anytime we needed stuff, there was always somebody around to help out. If we had little refrigerations, problems like with the galley stuff, not our fish holds, but in the galley, we had Uncle Amos Hashimoto, who, he was affiliated. He was, friends with Tommy at the fish market, Tommy Mafutano, and he would come in and fix our beer boxes and refrigerators in the galley. So it was just I consider it a family type deal, But these are the reasons I want to credit them, because we wouldn't have survived without them. It wasn't us and the crew. It was a collaboration of a bunch of the industry people, friends in our community here in San Pedro, and I just want to thank them for these lifetime friendships that we had with them, and we couldn't have possibly survived without them. So God bless all of them. And next week we'll go on to other subjects. Maybe sometime during the week I'll have Phil sneak it in. We'll give you a preview as to what a topic that we'll hit on. But I'm going to sign off now. We're out. Yep.
Oh my God, nice fish. Danny, good job.
Thank you.
Hey, what was that on, 30 pound?
30 pounds.
Beautiful grade. What
I
grade
had
is
to go up
that?
to heavy line.
What do you think?
50, 60 or so.
Yeah, nice fish.
Danny Kadota and I went to Torrance, California to the Sushi Chef Institute to try these fish chips out.
A fish chip.
Really?
It is. That's what he said. I go, wow.
You are going to have to try these. So good.